It's the home of truth, Newzroom Africa, and your honor of you tonight in a round table with Mmusi Maimane, the leader of the opposition. Thabo, is yours now.
Well, looking back over the years of the Progressive Party, the DP, the DA, and the array of leadership that has been there, from your Helen Suzman, your Stas Stratler, your Colin, your Van Sale, your Tony Leon, your Helen Ziller. Do you think you were a departure from the norm and therefore didn't quite get the kind of reception that you would have gotten in the party? One, firstly, you were just coming from Liberty. You were running the church there. And your politics, national party politics, were not up to scratch. You're a 35-year-old. The folks in the DA looking at you and saying, why is this young man being catapulted into the leadership of this party? He's only been in parliament for just a year. What does he know about this party?
Look, I never hold the view that says that age is the competence for leadership. When I came into the DA, I was very aware of the fact that when I was coming into the organization, not only did we need to move away from the Western Cape and govern in more places, that was a very important objective, but also how do we grow the organization right throughout the country? You see, because if you look at the context within which all of those leaders operated, and many of them did an incredible job, they grew the organization. But you can't deny that there were certain periods where they sought to consolidate minority votes and a different approach to that. That requires a particularly strategic difference. But when you say now, how do you become this organization that is right across the country? That requires a different level.
Yeah.
And therefore, I felt that that was the project. And the legacy I'd like to leave the DA with, regardless of when that is one, it's a party that will represent all South Africans, and by that it's not just a race.
So let's talk a little bit about this project. I think you've mentioned it a couple of times. So part of this project is you on Freedom Day in 2018, you come out and say, I'm going to deal with this thing called white privilege and black poverty. And whoa, your caucus calls you to a meeting and say, hold on, Chief, you don't say things like that. You're going to upset the people here in this party. Does the DA have a problem of the old guard, the old conservatives who are not ready for this project of yours?
No, you've got to keep pushing the organization. And I still maintain that infused in the constitution of the DA is the notion of fairness. And you can't discuss fairness unless you're willing to acknowledge that the historical injustice that left black South Africans out, that advantaged a particular race over another. And I think part of what exacerbated the debate was that, if you can recall, it was taking place around critical race theory, and as it was occurring amongst university campuses, which has gone to a particular interpretation. So there was a debate about that. But believe you me, I will certainly stand up in any context and call upon people to say, look, the addressing of the injustice that was purported on black South Africans is not only something that only black South Africans must fight for. Yeah. It requires black and white people.
So you still stand by your words that we need to fight white privilege?
People must stand together and fight that issue. Now, on this question of privilege, it is something that says, you know, for many white South Africans, I hear a lot of them, they come back and they say, but I didn't grow up privileged, I didn't. And I often say to them, no one is saying you grew up wealthy or any of that. But there was a system that gave you an advantage. I'm not here to say I'm going to take that. I want you to participate in saying, how do we collectively making sure that South Africans who are left behind are included in the South Africa we want to build, in a way that says we can collectively together. Because otherwise, if we don't all do the exercise together, then you end up in a different debate where you have issues of white minority capital, you have a contestation between black and white. That's not the South
But are you singing from the same hymn sheet in the DA? And, you know, if I were to ask in Afrikaans, I would want to know whether, are you slaning the Qatar? Are you the one who is playing the tune? Because in every organization, the leader has to, in a sense, put a stamp and have a soundtrack, in a sense, that people are saying. Is it a figment of our imagination that you are a leader who constantly has to look up, behind his shoulder where the previous leader seems to be slanning a different Qatar, right? You have a situation in the waterfront where one of your leaders is attacked in a racial incident, whatever the facts are, right? Your previous leader is the first one on the scene to defend whoever it is that was attacking her. Same with the Diana Kola ballot matter. Same with the issue, who was this chap who passed away, may his soul rest in peace, at your Congress, who said that Verwoerd was a fantastic guy, right? In each of these incidents, you have a situation where your former leader is overshadowing your message, right? Why are you not dealing with this thing decisively to put a stamp on your authority within the narrative of the DA? Or is it the figment of our imagination? Tell us today what the story is there.
When you are working a project of reconciliation, it's not just narrowly in the DA, it's also a country discussion, right? Can we agree on at least that? The country itself is also engaged in a discussion about race relations. And so when you are leading through that, only the DA has to answer these very difficult questions about how do we integrate a reconciled society. Along with that, it comes with different interpretations. Now, you know very clearly that when even the former leader started to raise questions about the legacy of colonialism, I took on a stance and I said, I certainly will not have this. And so we worked that particular process about her own role and what she does. But in any organization, you want for a principle of fairness to also apply. And progressively going forward, we're always going to have these issues. I'm not going to sit here today and say the incidents of interracial conversations within the DA are the last. They are going to continue to happen, mainly because we're bringing people who, for some of them, have shared such divergent yesterdays that you want them to have a shared tomorrow. Now, as leader, I'm always going to push forward to that vision. There may, from time to time, as will happen in any context,
but if I may
be some
just
people
come
who
in there.
object,
If I
but
may just
you've
come
got
in
to
there.
drive ahead.
It's one thing to say we are always going to have these. It's another thing to deal decisively with it, because honestly speaking, at the back of what JJ is saying, today you have a case against one of your MPs, Diane Kolabana, back in the spotlight again. This happened in 2015 when she shared that Facebook post. And I remember how you came out and you were very decisive about what you said. You said the DA is not a party for racists. But today, there's claims that she said farm murders have decreased since the removal of then President Robert Mugabe as Zimbabweans have returned home. Women have themselves to blame and are stupid for being scammed as they enter into relationships with Nigerian men who sleep with them and solicit money under false pretenses. Then she says, she's alleged to have said as well, black children are killing whiteys with stones thrown at vehicles from bridges. Never mind the fact that colored or Indian people are also being killed. There's silence from the DA on that. And then you've got Helen Zille, who comes and has that public moment with Phumzile Van Dam. Now, at the end of the day, it's one thing for us to keep saying we are always going to have these discussions because we're being robust and we're moving forward. But what are you, as the DA leader, saying? You haven't spoken about Diane Kolabana, the latest allegations against her. You haven't even said anything to Helen Zille when one of your own MPs was having a go at her as well, and Helen Zille saying, kind of like defending what had happened to her. There's not a decisive message from you as the leader.
Well, let me first of all say this.
Please clarify us, because it seems...
On the Diane Kolabana matter, the message is quite clear. I can come here and allege you of anything, right? It goes to a proper process. It will appear at the Human Rights Commission. You can be assured, if she's found against at the Human Rights Commission, she will not be a DA MP. It's a basic, simple thing. Now, let's allow the process to do its own job. Because as you are correctly saying, these are allegations.
And Zille?
Helen Zille is an ordinary member.
But does it make it right what she says in the public domain?
The fundamental issue here is, again, there's an incident that takes place at the waterfront. Now, racism must be condemned. I don't care who is committed by or what, it must be condemned. But along with that, let me speak as a black South African who comes in a mixed marriage, got kids. You know, often I get incidents of racism against me. I get that. Now, I will take a stance and say, I'm going to take action against the respective individual, family, or whatever. And let the process follow through. Because when it's all said and done, I want to make sure that the right process was done. We're a party of institutions. And if I woke up tomorrow morning and simply said, let's override those institutions, those things don't matter, then you end up in a subjective space. And when I think about Phumzile in this instance, the incident was not right, and I think it must be investigated properly. And when the facts come out, then the appropriate action is taken. But I think what we must be careful with, and this is one of the things that social media has enhanced, is that social media often leads us into a discussion where we make judgments or calls, and then there's a pressurizing to say, well, you must join the discussion and the call, otherwise you're not leading.
We're going to have to take a break there, Mmusi, but I think maybe when we come back, just to spend some 2 minutes on this some more, this for us seems like a trend. We're not talking about multiple DA people doing stuff, but your former leader who actually promoted your own elevation into the DA one way or another is busy becoming like an albatross around your neck. You have to be honest with us about how this is making you feel. Let's take a break now. We're on a round table with Mmusi Maimane. You can follow the conversation on hashtag Your View on 405. I'm sitting with Bongiwe Zwane, our output editor here at Newzroom Africa, as well as one of our co-anchors here, Thabo Mdluli. And we're in a round table to just try to understand from the leader of the opposition how he sees the state of our nation. But let's take a break now.